The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to this month's edition of the Psych Central webinar series. This month, we are presenting Who Are You Dating? Learning About Patterns, and we have an excellent an excellent Psych Central presenter for you, and we will let her introduce herself. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
It's all you.
Thank you. I'm Nancy Gomez, and I have I've been in this profession, psychology, for like 20 plus years, and I have dealt with every population possible, the severely mentally ill, HIV positive, substance abuse, child abuse. I investigated child abuse also. Dealt with depression, people with depression, anxiety, and family. I've done family work, so you name it, gang members, sociopaths, actually. So that was interesting. But yes, narcissists, you name it, I have done it. We are talking about who are you dating, learning about patterns. And the really good thing about patterns is that you can translate whatever I tell you to your career, how you job hunt, anything, because we are made up of patterns of behavior. So let's see, how do I do this? Okay, so the takeaways. We're going to learn how to examine choices in dating and develop the ability to spot unhealthy trends in dating patterns and discover how these patterns can be traced back to learned family scripts. Okay, so let's start with, okay, there you go, patterns traced to family scripts, because we do have to go back to the beginning. And because your family of origin is where you began. And it's not about blaming anybody or the stereotypical blaming the mother. It's just about where you were formed. And it doesn't, and when I speak about this, I try and speak in generalities, because the family, and it's not the blended family, like your parents got divorced and then there was a blended family. It's your family of origin. And we know that family can be made up of two moms, two dads, a single mother, grandparents, aunt and uncle, all types of configurations. But there's always a male figure and a female figure. It can be the two dads and the sister who comes around. It can be two moms and an uncle or a good male friend, because most people who have children and don't have the mother figure, the female figure or the male figure in their lives, what they like to do is bring somebody in to expose that male child or female child to somebody of their own sex, and that's going to be important, and we'll talk about that. And we're not talking about gender identity. We're not talking about sexual orientation. We're talking about really actually gender identity. We're not talking about sexual orientation. So in the beginning, the father or male figure in a female child's life is her first boyfriend. It'll set the pattern of behavior for how she deals with the opposite sex. The mother-daughter or female figure relationship is the most powerful bond in the world, for better or for worse. It sets the stage for all other relationships. And I took that quote from Mother-Daughter Wisdom, the publishers Hay House and Dr. Christiane Northrup. She says that no other childhood experience is as compelling as a young girl's relationship with her mother, because each of us takes in at a cellular level how our mother feels about being female, just like how the male figure shows the male child how they feel about being male, what he or she believes about his or her body, and how he or she takes care of their health and what they believe is possible in life. So this caretaker will be the mirror that reflects the child's identity and either make them feel whole, invisible, not enough, and anything in between. So what you have is basically, let's take a female child. The male figure in her life is going to teach her how to deal with males. And the female figure in her life is going to reflect on her how she should be a woman. Now, we have a column analysis. One of the things that is important to do so that you can understand what's happened in your life other than going to therapy, which is why therapy can take a while, is to do an analysis. This is something you can do at home, and you can take the mom or the female figure and write down the verbal or nonverbal messages in relationship with you. So, and this is important because you learn how to handle disagreements, how to process feelings, and the male and female figures in our life shape and color the lens through which we see and organize meaning about other human interactions. We usually end up picking people that either resemble that male or female figure in our life. It doesn't matter if you're, where you are in the LGBTQ classification, or if you're straight. It's you pick somebody that is going to resemble that person, that opposite sex figure in your life. That just happens. And people can do that literally, pick somebody who looks exactly like let's say in a female child, and they're straight, and they pick a male. So it can be exactly like their father or father figure, and it can be with qualities. It can be habits. It can be how they treated them. For the father and male figure, you can also take the other column, for example, in this analysis, and do a verbal and nonverbal message and the relationship that you had. And again, this can be the uncle, the male friend, whatever figure that you had in your life. The other thing that is very important to analyze is the relationship between mom and dad, or the mom and dad figures in your life, because it's an example. It gives you an example of what a relationship is supposed to be. Now, for better or for worse, their interaction, how they deal with disagreements, how they deal with problems, bad days, compromise. This is all what is being recorded in your subconscious, and what you play out without knowing, hence the subconscious, when you meet somebody. The other thing to examine is also from the family systems theory is what role do you play in your family? Were you the peacemaker? Were you considered the screw up? Were you the responsible one? And you can also take a look at your personal relationships, like groups of friends. Do you replicate the role that you played or play in your family? And you can also take a look at your past romantic partners. It can be romantic partners in marriage, someone you lived with, crushes, one-night stands, great loves of your life, and do that. Because when you start examining these characteristics in your family of origin, where you were what you were born into, what family constellation you were born into, you will begin to see patterns that tell you what you're doing. Because we're creatures of habit. As a child, we mimic. Patterns are natural. It's nothing bad about anything that I said, that happens, because it happens naturally. So you have columns for, for that, and for the romantic partners, and you can put their name and one adjective that describes what attracted you to him or her, what happened to the relationship, and how it left you feeling. So let me see. Okay. So what does all this mean? Well, I'm going to give you an example. And again, there are a million combinations of family and so on. So we're just going to take this at face value. So you have a column for the mother figure and the verbal, nonverbal messages and or the relationship with you. Excuse me. So in this column, it might be that the mother didn't spend time with the family, liked for me to compliment her, would remind me to chew with my mouth closed. And again, it can be one or three or more. And so what we have here is probably a mother who is distant, has some narcissistic qualities, and was very concerned not about substance but about appearance. Chewing with your mouth closed, how you came across, how you presented yourself. The father figure said I was a prize, spent time teaching me things, warm. Okay, so you have somebody here who's a giving person, who is a person who is considerate, maybe to, a fault, because he's with somebody who is distant, not somebody who compliments him. Perhaps, this is all perhaps. So you have somebody who is, who's warm, affectionate, and, makes you feel like you are special, you're valued. Now, the mother and father figure relationship, it was distant. You remember there was a lot of drama, so it's chaotic. So that you can say in your conscious mind, that's something that I want to avoid, but most likely, subconsciously, you will seek that out in order to resolve it. And, you might seek out dramatic encounters because subconsciously you're trying to repair that. And I know it may sound a little, it may be difficult to grasp because we're not, because I'm sort of running through it, and this is a lot more, this can be attachment styles can be, one whole webinar. Your role in the family. Let's say you were a peacemaker. You were seen as the responsible one. Okay. So let's take one romantic pair up. Let's say it was Joe. You met him at the pool. He had a great body. You dropped hints to get him to ask you out. Is anything wrong with this? No. Dated a few times and it stopped. And how did you feel? You felt abandoned. Well, if you put more columns of all of the Joes or Janes or whatever, your your orientation is, and you put a list. Just with the romantic pair-ups, you can start seeing patterns. And so I only put one example of a romantic pair-up, but you can see here, if you want to draw the lines, that, okay, you noticed he had a great body. Is there anything wrong with that? Absolutely not. But that may come from, you know, your mother's emphasis on appearance. She liked for you to compliment her. So maybe that, you know, you're very preoccupied with that when you look at, you know, your list of romantic pair-ups and all of the, you know, what you filled in as to, you know, how you met them, how, you know, what happened in the relationship and how you felt afterwards. You dropped hints to get asked out. Well, that's probably because you learned your femininity, about your femininity and how to work it, because your father was very affectionate, and you know, every little girl, you know, the father is the first boyfriend, analytically. And you dated a few times and then it stopped and you felt abandoned. And so that could be a, you know, a reflection of the relationship between the mother figure and the father figure. It was distant, there was drama, you know, it wasn't consistent, you dated a few times and it stopped. Is there anything wrong with any of this? No. But with the purpose, with the end game here in this webinar being that you want to examine what's going on with your relationships. And like I said, it doesn't have to be romantic pair-ups. It can be bosses, it can be colleagues, it can be friendships, and maybe you're not feeling satisfied. That's why we, you know, we're going to do this. So there's that. So examine your choices in dating. As an adult, here is what you need to know about your dating choices. You are your first date. You are a combination of all of your family experiences, which has, you know, have translated into how you handle your friends when they make you upset, to how you handle your boss, and so on. So when it's time to look for romantic partners, you will, whether you like it or not, to some extent, you will be choosing one who is a reflection of these patterns. So what you will need to do is to date you for a bit. Who are you really? You need to find that out. Who are you? What don't you want in your life? Do you not want a chaos and busy life? Do you not want to feel alone? I mean, that's very significant. Do you not, I mean, what is it that you don't want in your life? What do you want in your life? Do you want a business? Do you want children? Do you want a home? Do you want to just be free and you know, wherever the wind takes you? You need to be honest with yourself about that. Are you pursuing your passion? I mean, you know, be it skiing, I mean, being an excellent tango dancer, trying new things, having time for yourself, whatever. The road that you take in life has to be paved by you first, without expectation or changing direction. Even girls' night out or that breakfast you always take at the deli on Sunday mornings, you don't want to change it just to make someone else happy or for fear of being alone or losing them. And that does happen. You may say to yourself, well, you know, I already know this. you don't have to tell me. You don't have to tell me this, but you really don't know that. Just like surgeons don't really know what the situation is despite the diagnostic tests until they go in, you don't know what will come to light within yourself until you are interacting with a romantic prospect, because it's going to depend on your patterns. It's going to depend on where you are in life. Are you in a good place in your life or a seemingly good place? Or did you just suffer a loss in your family or a downtime? That can leave you feeling very vulnerable. And, you know, somebody paying attention to you may feel good. Now, on the surface, that may sound like, oh, no, that's not me. God, I mean, you know, what do you think I am? But it's not that. You're human. And your subconscious, you know, works as a subconscious for a reason, because you can't be aware of everything at every moment, which is why there are defense mechanisms and why your subconscious works undercover. So, spotting unhealthy trends. Okay. What you want to do is when that date happens, after you've done the exercise and you can, you know, replay this or whatever, and spend some time, whether a month, 2 weeks, whether you started therapy, had a heart-to-heart talk with your close and trusted friends or members of your family of origin when it happens, you want to remember a few things. Let them talk. Whoever it is, whoever the prospect is, let them talk. That will be your baseline. Watch who they are, not who you want them to be. That is really key, because it is so easy to say and sit there and you've gotten dressed up and you've, you know, put your best foot forward and this is fun and you're going to a nice place and you're like, oh, wow. It's sort of like looking for a job, right? Sometimes you're thinking, oh my God, I just need a job already. And oh, and you start rationalizing in your head, okay, well, this person that I'm interviewing with, God, this just sounds like a very tense organization, but I can handle it. I mean, geez, you see what I'm saying? You can just start justifying, which is why knowing yourself and where you are and who you are is very important. If you're interested in them, I wanted to say, and I'm not talking about extremes, because extremes are not the issue. Sometimes we know in 5 minutes or a second, you know, that this choice isn't for you. But if you're interested in them, remember the number 3. By the 3rd date, you will get an idea, if you took the time to know yourself, whether or not this is worth your time. It's because people can't really keep up appearances the longer that you go out with them. And I've noticed that usually in 3 weeks, if you're dating, let's say twice a week or something, you will get a grand idea if you keep your eyes open that, you know what, I'm not going to pardon this or that I saw, these red flags, because, you know, this attention feels good. You know, just like in the job example. You have to see what's real. And if it's whether we are able, with all of our issues, we can accept what we see before us. You know, it's like if we go to a store and we see something that we like and we look at the price tag and we're like, oh my God, this is just too much money. We don't stare at it hoping it will magically change, right? We move on. I mean, it would be great, but life doesn't, you know, quite work that way. Let's see. If you have to explain to yourself or justify, if you start doing that in your head, like, oh, they were just busy, oh, they're just scared, that's why they didn't call, they're recently divorced, they're probably, gun shy, oh, he got mad because he got the wrong order, I understand that, I've gotten the wrong order before, and I've been upset, or I've been scared. If you do that, you have yourself a flag. And the red flag that you have, it may be tempting, like the apple, Adam and Eve, but this person may want something casual, may not be over their divorce, maybe they're what we call leaking anger. If you see a flare-up early on, even a minor one, it could be the beginning of a pattern. Many behaviors can be disguised as something nice, like, and I'm just picking an example here, I know what to order, allow me to order it for you. It sounds gallant, but along with other behaviors, if you have done your homework on yourself and what you want and what you will not deal with, and you have studied your columns, and you realize what you're choosing is not good for you, then it could be, you can be aware that it could perhaps be an indication that someone is controlling, for example. And it's not just how they treat the waiter or waitress, it's also how they are treating you. And yes, they may be awesome on paper, and oh my goodness, it's been a long time, but they may not be for you, or they may not, they may just not be that into you, as that book said. And wow, I really went through this fast, but well, what are you going to do? So if things are checking out, this is what it should look like. You will see follow through, consistent follow through. If they say they're going to call, then they're going to call. If they say they're going to do X, Y, Z, or they mention it, they follow through. You're going to see respect, consistent respect, not just opening the door on the first few dates. It's going to be consistent respect for you and for your needs, and not trying to convince you, not trying to change you, not trying to put pressure on you. And you're going to see consistency. Consistency is harder than you think. Consistency is, to be consistent at something like going to the gym, like showing up on time even though you're in the middle of a huge family mess, that's hard to do. It's hard to do. And so if somebody is consistent, that talks a lot about or speaks to their stability. Attentiveness. They're attentive, not only calling you and staying in touch with you, but they are attentive to your needs, not treating you like a spoiled prince or princess, but they respect what you like too. And kindness. Now that is not usually mentioned all the time, but kindness is very important. Somebody who is kind, who has their stuff, for want of a more succinct word, who has their stuff together. And that means they have a hold on their emotions. They can handle things. Yes, they can get upset. Yes, they can get annoyed, snarky, have a bad day, whatever, but they can keep it together. They're not going to take it out on somebody else. And if they do, if they start to, and they see the reaction on your face, or you say, excuse me, they will immediately recognize that that wasn't right. So they will have flaws, but they have an ability to recognize them. So that's what it should look like. And so that was it. And I put here that uncredited pictures because I like to give credit to the pictures, are from Pexels and Pixabay. And I put here, okay, I repeated it, and I put that if you want to work with me, I'm at couchissues@gmail.com. Gabe, I went through that really fast.
That was awesome. You got 30 minutes. It wasn't fast. It was efficient.
I did, right?
Excellent. Well, we've already got a couple of questions that popped up. And,
Okay.
you know, I kind of like the way the audience is thinking about this first one. They said that it was during the part where you had mentioned if something is not the price that you want, you don't get angry, etc. You sit it down and you realize that staring at it won't make the price magically change. But could you not negotiate a better price or wait until it goes on sale? And is there an equivalent? I think the point that they're trying to make is the minute somebody does something wrong, should we just abandon them and run? Or and I'm filling in that little last part there for the sake of conversation.
Absolutely. Excellent question. Excellent question. And I like the part about negotiating. You know, it depends. Now, are you at a fair? You know, at the Second Avenue Fair, as they have in New York, where you can negotiate? I mean, is there a negotiating process? Then go for it. But if you are at Macy's, you know, that price is that price. And my point in using that is that if you see in front of you somebody who is where they're showing you a behavior that could be a red flag, that's why I said that along with other behaviors, i.e. patterns, creates a pattern of behaviors that you can later, like I said, on the third date, on the third week, on the third month. And I use threes a lot because, like I said, people cannot keep up a facade for long unless, you know, if they're Ted Bundy, and hopefully you will not come in contact with, you know, something like that. But that's an extreme. But people usually drop their guard along about, like I said, if you're dating, along about the third week. And, you know, so you want to be able to gather all of that information because you've let them talk, you've let them, you know, react. Certainly you share, but you've gathered, you've done your reconnaissance, you've gathered your intelligence, and then you want to sit down with the column, that exercise that you did, and go, what I'm sort of feeling the same feelings. What am I doing here? Are there some patterns, unhealthy patterns that I'm falling into again? Or are there some things that, you know, are minor? And you could even do a column for that person and say, okay, here's something positive, here's something that I didn't quite like, and, you know, put all of the intelligence down on paper and then analyze it and say, okay, I can work with this, I can negotiate this. I think I answered the question.
Oh yes, very, very, very thorough. Thank you so much. That's awesome. The next question that has come up, and I'm not sure what part of the presentation that it came up in, just to be completely fair. So you'll have to decide your own context on this one. But the question is what if you dated somebody for a while, you realize they weren't the one for you, and then 10 years later they come back into your life? Should you rely on the data that you collected 10 years ago?
I'm going to say yes, and here's why. And the here's why is very important. Yes, people can change. However, it ended for a reason. And I'm not giving you a throwaway answer by saying, you know, you might want to get out your trusty column analysis and then put, you know, what you felt, excuse me, what you felt and what he is saying and what he is doing, he or she is doing, and so on, and analyze it that way and say, well, you know, I think that yeah, he's made some changes, he or she they've made some changes, but, you know, I don't think that we're meant for each other. Because here's the deal. If you have to start, like I said, justifying or explaining to yourself and going, well, you know, he said he went to therapy and I can tell, and he did this and he had a crash and he lost a leg and it really made him, you know, appreciate life more, and I can see that the way he acts with his children, or he acts with his dog, he acts with his mother, he acts with me, whatever. People have a tendency in stressful situations to revert to form. That's just the way it is. And I think that if you moved on, you might, okay, if you moved on from this person that you dated for a long time, there was a reason. And as you moved on in that process, what did you learn? What did you learn about yourself as you were, you know, finishing crying or talking to your friends ad nauseum, which is fine, but what did you learn as you were able to move on? About him, about you, about both of you as a couple? You know, that's the most important thing. And why is he coming back? You know, people usually move on, you know. Excuse me, why is he coming back? That I would wonder that. I'd be curious, not in a mean way, not in any way, but just I'd be curious. And then the other question I would have for you is, what made you stay that long with them? You know, I mean, you might want to look at that. Maybe it was because, well, Nancy, it's because, you know, I loved him. Well, let's take a closer look, especially if you're considering going back with them. You know, I mean, were you constantly working on the relationship? Were you constantly explaining away certain behaviors? I mean, why did it end? So you really want to take a look at that before you take a step and go backwards. Because for me, that is going backwards. People come back to something that is comfortable, you know, because change is scary. It's scary to move on, especially after a long-term relationship. Oh my God, you have inside jokes, you have pet names, you have a history, you have friends in common, experiences, tough times. You know, it's comfortable. And so I'm just wondering, maybe, you know, did you, in this time that you were away from this person, did you not grow? You know, I grow and learn things about yourself and develop new interests. And how about let's find somebody who is compatible with this person that you are now? I think I answered the question.
Very, very cool. Thank you so much. So this is our last question as of right now. So if there is any other questions, if you're thinking about, now is the time to type them in, because if there's none when she's done answering, we'll go ahead and disconnect. So the final question is, can you give us some hope that we'll find meaningful and long-term relationships? Sometimes it always seems like a downer.
Yes, it does always seem like a downer. What I would suggest is to, you don't have to listen to this whole webinar again. You can go to a few of the slides, and especially the one about the column analysis, because you want to take a look at what is not working. You know, what keeps not working? Well, the only way you're going to find that, because you're not going to change anybody else except yourself, is to examine, you know, how you were brought up. And this is the quick and dirty way to do it. I was trained analytically in my doctoral program, you know, a Freudian analyst, you know, who does therapy. You know, you know, a lot of the analytical exercises and things that I learned are very useful. So it's sort of like when you do your budget in your head. It's very different than when you put it down on paper in black and white, right? Everything looks very real, etc. So I would suggest, and there's no downer, because You want to be able to A, date yourself. Review that part in the webinar. You've got to date yourself. Get to know yourself. Take yourself out for an ice cream. What do you like to do? What is your routine now? Who is surrounding you? Do you have a routine? Do you go and work out? Does that give you satisfaction? Do you sit on a summer night or on a spring night and paint? Does that give you therapy? Is that therapeutic for you? Do you play an instrument? I mean, who are you? Who are you and what are you about? Did you do ballet? Do you know how to cook really well? What about your talents? How much fun is it to spend with you? I know I'm entertaining, and I'm very entertaining, and I love spending time with myself. And you better believe that there are times when I want, or I have wanted, to be a part of a couple. If I wasn't part of a couple and I'd see couples, it would be like, oh my God, what is going on? But the thing is that you have to date yourself first. And when you get to know that person, then you can sit down and say, well, I want this, this, and this. Be it like when you go to a store and you look at an outfit, right? I mean, I'm just pulling examples out because I really like analogies because they help me. Excuse me. You go to the store, you look for something that you like, right? You look for something that fits, that's comfortable. You might pose in the mirror. You will look for something that emphasizes your best assets, right? You have to be that comfortable in your skin and know your body and know yourself that well in order to pick out an outfit, don't you? And be able to, complement it with accessories or makeup or whatever it is, and your hair, and you know yourself. So that's the way you want to be able to pick somebody. You've got to know where you came from. You've got to know how that affected you. You've got to know who you've been picking that hasn't been working out. And look at those patterns and say, I seem to go for projects. Or, I seem to go for guys who are dominant. And then I get lost. And then I try and please. So that's what you want to do. It's a matter of just getting to know yourself and dating yourself. And that way you know who you want, like the outfit, beside you to highlight you. Just like you want to highlight them, but you want someone who can compliment you. That's my answer.
Thank you so much. And that's the end of our questions. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in, and we will see everybody next month on the Psych Central webinar series.